I'm sitting in my dead man's chair right now, watching my own funeral on the security cameras I had installed last month. My name is Marcus Holloway, and 72 hours ago, I became the only person in history to attend his own funeral as a living, breathing ghost. What I witnessed there, it's the reason my hands are shaking as I tell you this story. See that woman in the front row dabbing her eyes with a Hermes handkerchief? That's Catherine, my wife of 18 years. The one who whispered "I love you" in my ear every morning for the past decade. 3 hours after she thought I died in that car crash, I watched her make a phone call that destroyed me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The man you're looking at had everything money could buy, but was starving for the one thing it couldn't. The certainty that someone, anyone, loved Marcus the man, not Marcus the bank account. For months, that hunger ate me alive. Every happy birthday, Dad, from my kids felt rehearsed. Every kiss from Catherine tasted like obligation. Every family dinner felt like a performance where I was the only one who didn't know the script. So I did something that will either make you think I'm the most brilliant man alive or the most broken. I orchestrated my own death to see who would truly mourn me. The plan was simple. Stage a car accident on the winding mountain road near our Aspen house. No body recovered. Just enough blood and wreckage to convince everyone I was gone. Then hide in the surveillance room of our family home and watch the next 3 days unfold. What I saw in those 72 hours didn't just break my heart. It reconstructed my entire understanding of love, loyalty, and what family really means. Some of what my hidden cameras captured was so devastating that I considered staying dead forever. But other moments showed me a kind of love so pure, it saved my life. My daughter Emma's reaction alone was worth dying for. But my son Jake? What he did on the second day, I'm still not sure I can forgive him. And Catherine, sweet, beautiful Catherine. The woman I thought I knew better than myself became a complete stranger the moment she thought she was free. Right now, as I'm telling you this, they still think I'm dead. The funeral was yesterday. They buried an empty casket while I watched from the shadows. And tonight I have to decide. Do I stay dead and protect what's left of my heart? Or do I come back to life and face a family that might be nothing like what I thought it was? This isn't just about money or family drama. This is about the most dangerous experiment a human being can conduct. Testing whether the people closest to you love the real you or just the version of you that serves them. If you've ever looked at the people in your life and wondered, would they love me if I had nothing? Then what happened in my house those 3 days will either give you hope or terrify you completely. Hit that like if you've ever felt invisible in your own family. Because what I'm about to reveal about each person I loved most will change how you see your own relationships forever. Comment below with the one person you're not sure would truly mourn you, because after hearing my story, you might want to find out while you're still alive to do something about it. Subscribe for the most raw, honest storytelling you'll find anywhere, because some truths are too important to keep buried. The cameras are still rolling. My family still thinks I'm gone. And what I discovered about the woman I married? It starts with a phone call she made exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes after my death. That phone call changed everything. The last dinner I ever ate as a living man was lasagna. Catherine's famous recipe, the one she'd been making every third Thursday for the past 8 years. I can still taste the ricotta, still smell the oregano that lingered in our kitchen like a lie told too many times. Sitting at the head of our mahogany table, I watched my family perform their evening ritual, and all I could think was, this is the last time they'll pretend to love me. Emma, my 16-year-old daughter, was scrolling through her phone between bites, her blonde hair falling across her face like a curtain she used to hide from the world. Every few minutes, she'd glance up and catch me staring, offering one of those practiced smiles teenagers give their parents when they want something. "Dad, can I have $300 for homecoming? Sarah's dress was like super expensive and I don't want to look cheap." There it was. The ask. It always came eventually. Jake, my 20-year-old son, was home from college for the weekend, though I suspected it had more to do with the fact that his credit card had been declined than any desire to spend time with family. He kept checking his watch, probably calculating how long he needed to stay before he could disappear to whatever party was calling his name. "Hey Dad, my car's making this weird noise. Think you could look at it tomorrow? Or maybe I should just take it to the dealer. Whatever's easier." Translation: whatever's more expensive. Catherine sat across from me, radiant as always in that effortless way that had first caught my attention 20 years ago at a charity gala. She was telling us about her book club's latest selection, some novel about a woman who discovers her husband's been living a double life. The irony wasn't lost on me. "It's fascinating how well we think we know the people closest to us," she said, twirling pasta around her fork with practiced elegance. "The author really explores how marriage can become this elaborate performance after a while." My chest tightened. Did she know? Had she figured out what I was planning? But no, Catherine was just being Catherine, making conversation to fill the silence that had become our family's default setting. I nodded and made appropriate sounds while my mind wandered to the burner phone hidden in my office safe, the one I'd use tomorrow morning to call my lawyer and execute the plan I'd been perfecting for months. As dinner wound down, each family member excused themselves with the polite efficiency of people who had somewhere better to be. Emma needed to finish her AP history essay. Jake had promised to meet his friend Tyler downtown. Catherine had emails to catch up on for her nonprofit board. They scattered like leaves in the wind, leaving me alone with the dirty dishes and the crushing weight of what I was about to do. I cleared the table slowly, memorizing the way the evening light filtered through our dining room windows, the sound Catherine's heels made on the hardwood floors upstairs, Emma's muffled laughter coming from her bedroom as she FaceTimed her friends. These were the sounds of my life, the soundtrack to 23 years of building something I thought was real. That night, I lay in bed next to Catherine, listening to her breathe, wondering if she'd missed the sound of mine. At 6:47 a.m., I became a dead man walking. The burner phone felt cold against my ear as I dialed Detective Ray Morrison, a guy I'd gone to high school with who now worked traffic accidents. "Ray, it's Marcus Holloway. I need to report something terrible." My voice cracked with rehearsed grief. I think my car went off Serpent's Pass last night. I was driving back from the Denver office and there was this storm. The guardrail's completely destroyed and there's blood on the rocks below." The lie rolled off my tongue like it had been waiting there for years. While Ray coordinated the search and rescue operation that would find exactly what I'd planted, I retreated to the surveillance room I'd had secretly installed 6 months ago. Hidden behind a false wall in our basement, it was my mission control center, complete with monitors displaying every angle of our house. The kids had never even known it existed. Catherine thought it was just additional wine storage. From my hidden perch, I watched Catherine receive the phone call that would change everything. She was in our walk-in closet, choosing between two nearly identical black blazers for another charity meeting. The phone rang at exactly 8:23 a.m. "Mrs. Holloway, this is Detective Morrison with the Colorado State Police. I'm afraid I have some difficult news about your husband." I watched her face drain of color through the high-definition camera I'd installed above our bedroom doorway. Her legs gave out and she sank onto the velvet bench where she put on her shoes every morning. For a moment, just a moment, I saw what looked like genuine shock, maybe even grief. But then something flickered across her features. Something I'd never seen before in 18 years of marriage. Relief? Calculation? It was gone so quickly I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. I need to call the children," she whispered into the phone. "They'll need to come home immediately." Watching her call Emma first broke something inside me. My daughter's scream pierced through the phone speaker, raw and devastating. Even from my hidden room I could hear her sobbing, could see Catherine's own tears finally starting to fall. Real tears. Proper widow's tears. The call to Jake was different. He was silent for a long moment after Catherine delivered the news, and when he finally spoke, his voice was steady, controlled. "I'll be there in 3 hours, Mom." Don't talk to any lawyers or insurance people until I get home, okay? And definitely don't sign anything. Lawyers. Insurance. My son was already thinking about money while his sister was still crying in the background. Catherine spent the next 2 hours on the phone, calling relatives, friends, and colleagues. With each conversation, she seemed to settle more comfortably into her role as the grieving widow. Her voice took on the right tremor. Her pauses fell in all the appropriate places. It was a masterful performance, one that would have fooled me completely if I hadn't been watching from the shadows. But it was the phone call she made at 12:17 p.m. that shattered my world completely. She waited until Emma had gone to her room, until the house was quiet except for the tick of the grandfather clock in our foyer. Then she picked up her cell phone and dialed a number I didn't recognize. "He's gone," she said simply. No tears now, no tremor in her voice, just cold, factual delivery. "The police found the car this morning. No body yet, but they're calling it a fatality." The voice on the other end was male, familiar, though I couldn't place it from my position behind the monitors. "I know, baby. I know it's been hard pretending all these years. But we're free now, finally free to be together." My wife, my faithful, devoted wife of 18 years, had been having an affair. Hour 16 of being dead, and I was learning that grief reveals people's true nature faster than anything else in this world. From my underground tomb of monitors, I watched my family navigate the first day of their supposed loss. And what I saw rewrote everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and the people who shared my name. Emma hadn't stopped crying. She sat in the corner of our living room, clutching the Stanford hoodie I'd worn to her volleyball games, breathing in what remained of my cologne like it was oxygen. Her friends had come by with flowers and awkward teenage condolences, but she barely acknowledged them. This wasn't performance grief. This was the raw, ugly kind that comes from losing someone who actually mattered. Every sob that racked her body felt like a dagger in my chest. My baby girl, my Emma, was truly mourning me. Not my money, not my connections, not what I could do for her. She was grieving the loss of her father, the man who used to read her bedtime stories and teach her to drive stick shift in the empty mall parking lot on Sunday mornings. But Jake's arrival changed the entire atmosphere of our house. He walked through the front door with the focused energy of someone on a mission, barely pausing to hug his devastated sister before heading straight for my office. I watched through the cameras as he rifled through my desk drawers, not even bothering to look grief-stricken when no one was watching. He found my insurance policies within 20 minutes, and I could see him doing math in his head as he read through the terms. "Mom," he called to Catherine, who was entertaining a steady stream of well-wishers in the kitchen. "We need to talk about Dad's life insurance. The sooner we file the claim, the better. And I think we should call his lawyer about the will reading." The will reading? Not even 24 hours, and my son was already counting his inheritance. Catherine handled the constant flow of visitors with the grace of someone born to play the grieving widow. She accepted casseroles and condolences with equal composure, her eyes red-rimmed at just the right moments, her voice catching on cue whenever someone mentioned my name. But I noticed things others didn't. How she kept checking her phone, how she excused herself to take important calls that always seemed to lift her spirits. The most devastating moment came when my brother David arrived from Phoenix. David and I had our differences over the years, but seeing him break down in Catherine's arms reminded me that some people's love for me was genuine. He stood in our foyer, this big, successful man I'd always looked up to, sobbing like a child. "I should have called him more," he kept repeating. "I should have made more time. We were supposed to go fishing next month. He bought a new boat just for the trip." That was true. I had bought a boat, a 32-footer I'd been excited to show off to David. Now it would sit in our dock, another expensive reminder of plans that would never come to pass. But it was Catherine's reaction to David's grief that revealed the most. She comforted him with all the right words, made all the appropriate sounds, but her eyes remained dry, calculating, cold. This was a woman who was already moving on, already planning her next act. The phone calls continued throughout the day. The mysterious lover called 3 more times, conversations Catherine conducted from the privacy of our master bathroom with the water running to mask her voice. I couldn't make out every word, but I heard enough. Soon, and finally, and I love you too. Each word was a nail in the coffin of our marriage. By evening, when the house finally emptied of mourners and well-wishers, my family settled into what would become their new normal. Emma retreated to her room, still clutching my hoodie. Jake spread financial documents across the dining room table like a general planning his next campaign. And Catherine poured herself a glass of wine. Not the cheap stuff she usually drank, but the expensive Bordeaux she'd been saving for a special occasion. Apparently, my death qualified as special. If you discovered that someone you loved was celebrating your death instead of mourning it, would you rather know the truth or live in blissful ignorance? Sometimes the most devastating truths are the ones that set us free. Day 2 of my death brought visitors I hadn't expected, and phone calls that made me question whether I'd ever really known my family at all. The morning started with my lawyer, Gerald Hoffman, arriving with a briefcase full of documents and the kind of serious expression that meant serious money was about to be discussed. I watched from my hidden room as Gerald spread my will across the dining room table like he was revealing state secrets. Catherine sat at one end, Jake at the other, with Emma curled up in the corner chair, still wearing the same clothes from yesterday, still holding my Stanford hoodie like a lifeline. The estate is valued at approximately $42 million, Gerald announced with professional detachment. The house, the investments, the businesses, the life insurance policies, it's all here in black and white. $42 million. I watched Jake's eyes light up like Christmas morning. Even Catherine, despite her widow's composure, couldn't hide the slight upturn at the corners of her mouth. But Emma just cried harder, as if putting a number on my life somehow made my absence more real. Now, there are some unusual provisions, Marcus included, Gerald continued, adjusting his glasses. The bulk of the estate goes to Catherine, as expected, but there's a clause here that's rather unique. My heart pounded as I watched Gerald explain the trap I'd set months ago, back when I first started suspecting that my family's love came with a price tag. Marcus has left detailed instructions for a 1-year waiting period before any major assets can be liquidated or transferred. During this time, the family must continue living together in this house, maintaining the same lifestyle, attending family dinners 3 times a week. Only after completing this year of family unity, as he called it, can the estate be fully distributed. The silence that followed was deafening. Jake's face went from excitement to fury in record time. Are you kidding me? He's trying to control us from beyond the grave? I have plans, investments I need to make. I can't put my life on hold for a year because Dad had some weird obsession with family dinners. It's not just about dinners, Jake, Gerald explained patiently. The provisions require documented family activities, shared holidays, evidence of maintaining family bonds. Marcus was very specific about his wishes. Catherine's mask slipped just slightly. This is very controlling of Marcus. Even in death, he's trying to manipulate how we live our lives. Manipulate. The word hit me like a physical blow. Was that really how she saw my desire to keep our family together? Emma looked up from my hoodie with red, swollen eyes. Maybe Dad just wanted to make sure we stayed a family. Maybe he knew we'd all drift apart without him here to hold us together. Out of the mouths of babes. My 16-year-old daughter understood something my wife and adult son couldn't grasp, or didn't want to. The afternoon brought more revelations. While Catherine took another mysterious phone call in our bedroom, I watched Jake make calls of his own. The first was to a real estate agent. Yeah, I need you to do a quiet market analysis on a property, he said, rattling off our address. Hypothetically, if this place went on the market tomorrow, what could we expect? He was already planning to sell the family home where he'd grown up, where his little sister still lived, where every wall held memories of birthday parties and Christmas mornings and quiet family moments that apparently meant nothing to him. The second call was even worse. "Derek, it's Jake Holloway. Yeah, about that business opportunity we discussed. Looks like I might have access to some capital sooner than expected. How much did you say you needed for the crypto venture?" My son was planning to gamble my life's work on cryptocurrency schemes before my body was even found. But it was Catherine's evening phone call that destroyed what little hope I had left for my marriage. She waited until both kids were asleep, then slipped out to our garden, thinking she was out of range of my cameras. She was wrong. "I can't do it, Michael," she whispered into her phone. "I can't pretend to be the grieving widow for a whole year. The will. It's like Marcus knew something. Like he was testing us." Michael. Now I had a name for the man who'd been sleeping with my wife. Michael Reeves, I realized with sick clarity. Our neighbor from 3 houses down. The man who'd helped me install our new security system. The irony was almost too perfect. "Baby, it's just 1 year," Michael's voice carried through her phone. "Think about what we'll have when it's over. $42 million. We can disappear together, start fresh somewhere warm. Buy that little vineyard in Tuscany you're always talking about." They'd been planning their escape for months, maybe years, using my money to fund their fairy tale ending while I worked myself to death trying to provide for a family that was already gone. "But what if someone finds out about us?" Catherine asked. "What if the kids suspect something?" "They won't," Michael assured her. "Emma's too devastated to notice anything, and Jake's too busy counting his inheritance. We just need to be careful for 12 more months. 12 months of lies. 12 months of pretending to mourn a husband she couldn't wait to forget." That night, as I sat surrounded by monitors showing my family sleeping peacefully in their beds, I realized I wasn't watching 3 people mourn my death. I was watching 3 people endure the inconvenience of my dying. The third day of my death began with a revelation so crushing it made me question every memory, every moment of happiness I thought I'd shared with Catherine over the past 18 years. It started with a knock at our front door at 9:15 a.m. Michael Reeves, coming to pay his respects to the grieving widow next door. From my underground surveillance room, I watched my wife open the door to her lover, and the performance that followed deserved an Academy Award. Catherine's eyes were appropriately red, her shoulders slumped with the weight of loss, her voice barely above a whisper as she thanked him for coming. "I'm so sorry for your loss, Catherine," Michael said, and I had to admire the bastard's acting skills. "Marcus was such a good neighbor, such a good man. If there's anything Sarah and I can do—" He paused, letting his wife's name hang in the air like a shield against suspicion. Sarah. Sweet, trusting Sarah Reeves, who brought us Christmas cookies every December and organized the neighborhood book club. Sarah, who was currently visiting her mother in Florida, conveniently absent during my death and funeral. "Thank you, Michael. That means so much," Catherine replied. And then, in a move so subtle I almost missed it, she let her fingers brush against his as he handed her a casserole dish. The touch lasted exactly 2 seconds. But those 2 seconds contained more intimacy than I'd seen between Catherine and me in months. What happened next made me physically nauseous. As soon as the front door closed, Catherine set the casserole aside and checked to make sure Emma and Jake were still upstairs. Then she pulled out her phone and sent a text message. I couldn't see the exact words on her screen, but I could guess the content when Michael's response came 30 seconds later. A simple heart emoji. They were sexting. While my children grieved upstairs, my wife was sending love notes to our neighbor. But the real revelation came when I decided to dig deeper into Michael's background using my computer access from the surveillance room. What I found turned my blood to ice. Michael Reeves wasn't just Catherine's lover. He was the security consultant who'd installed our entire surveillance system 6 months ago. The same system I was using to watch my family. The same system that had given me the idea for this elaborate test in the first place. He'd been inside our house, alone with my wife, multiple times over the past half year. He'd seen our routines, our schedules, our most private spaces. He'd suggested camera placements, security protocols, entry points, and all the while, he'd been planning his own kind of infiltration. The timestamps on his work orders told a story I didn't want to believe. His first visit to install cameras was February 14th, Valentine's Day. His final system check was last Monday, just 4 days before my staged death. 4 days before Catherine called him to say, he's gone. Had they planned this together? Had my growing paranoia about my family's loyalty played right into their hands? I spent the afternoon reviewing months of saved security footage, looking for signs I'd missed. And there they were, hidden in plain sight. The lingering glances when Michael came to check the system. Catherine's extra attention to her appearance on days when he was scheduled to visit. The way she always found reasons to be alone with him while he worked. In March, I found footage of them in my office while I was in Denver on business. Catherine had let him in under the guise of a routine system upgrade, but the cameras caught them kissing passionately against the very desk where I paid the bills for our family's comfortable life. In April, they were in our bedroom while I was at Emma's school play. Michael was supposedly checking the motion sensors, but the footage showed Catherine on our bed, her dress pushed up around her waist, while the man I'd trusted with my family's security violated every boundary I held sacred. May brought even more evidence. They'd been meeting regularly while I was at work, using our home like their personal love nest. The guest bedroom where Catherine's mother stayed during visits. The kitchen where we ate family meals. Even Emma's bathroom while she was at school. No space in our home was sacred to them. But it was the footage from last week that broke me completely. The night before I staged my death, while I was in my office making final preparations for my elaborate test, Catherine and Michael were together in our living room, on our couch, under the family portrait we'd taken last Christmas. They weren't just having sex, they were planning. I could read their lips through the high-definition cameras, and what they were saying made my carefully orchestrated death feel like a cosmic joke. Soon, Michael had whispered, his hands tangled in Catherine's hair. Once he's gone, we can be together openly. No more sneaking around, no more lies. I can't wait, Catherine had replied. I'm so tired of pretending to love him, so tired of playing the perfect wife. Playing. Our entire marriage had been a performance for her, just like I'd suspected during our last dinner together. The cruelest part was realizing that my test had been unnecessary. I'd faked my death to discover whether my family truly loved me, but Catherine had been planning my actual death, or at least my disappearance from her life, all along. My elaborate scheme had simply accelerated her timeline. As evening fell on my third day of death, I watched Michael return to our house under cover of darkness. He slipped through the back gate like he'd done it 100 times before, using the spare key hidden under the garden gnome, the same key I'd thought was secret, known only to family. This time, there was no pretense of neighborly support. Catherine met him at the back door in a silk robe I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. They kissed like lovers reuniting after war, not like a widow seeking comfort from a family friend. And then they did the unthinkable. They made love in my bed, on sheets that still smelled like my cologne, while my children slept just down the hallway. How do you rebuild your life when you discover that the person you trusted most has been living a lie for years? And more importantly, is it possible to love someone who was never real to begin with? On the fourth day of my death, I discovered that in a house full of lies, my 16-year-old daughter was the only person capable of genuine love. While Catherine entertained her secret lover and Jake calculated his inheritance like a stockbroker, Emma continued to mourn me with the kind of raw, honest grief that reminded me why I'd wanted children in the first place. She hadn't showered since receiving the news. She barely ate, picking at the casseroles neighbors kept bringing like they were offerings to appease death itself. But it wasn't self-pity that kept her anchored to my Stanford hoodie and locked in her room. It was love. Pure, uncomplicated love for her father. I watched through the cameras as she did something that shattered my heart into a million pieces. She started talking to me, Not prayer, not wishful thinking, but actual conversations with the father she believed was gone forever. "Dad, I know you can't hear me," she whispered to my framed photograph on her nightstand, the one from her volleyball championship last year where we're both grinning like idiots. "But I need to tell you things I should have said when you were alive." She curled up on her window seat, the same spot where I used to read her bedtime stories when she was small, and poured her heart out to a ghost she thought could no longer answer. "I'm sorry I was always asking you for money. I know it probably seemed like that's all you were good for, but it wasn't. I didn't know how to talk to you about real things anymore. You worked so much, and when you were home you always looked so tired and stressed. I thought asking for stuff was easier than bothering you with my problems." Her problems. I realized with crushing guilt that I didn't even know what those problems were. When had I stopped being her father and become just her ATM? "Like this thing with Tyler Morrison," she continued, and my blood pressure spiked. Tyler Morrison was a senior, the kind of pretty boy athlete who'd broken hearts across 3 counties. "He's been texting me for weeks, wanting to hook up, and all my friends say I should because he's popular and hot and whatever. But I kept thinking about what you'd say if you knew. About how you always told me I'd deserve better than boys who only wanted one thing." Had I told her that? I couldn't remember specific conversations, but apparently some part of my parenting had stuck. Even in death, I was protecting my little girl from teenage mistakes. "I never texted him back, Dad. I blocked his number yesterday right after Mom told me about the accident. Because I realized that if you were gone, I needed to be the kind of person who would make you proud, not the kind who disappoints people who love her." Through my tears, I watched Emma make the kind of mature decision that most adults struggled with. She was choosing integrity over popularity, self-respect over instant gratification. At 16, she had more moral clarity than her mother. But it was what happened next that convinced me Emma deserved to know the truth about everything, including the fact that her father was still alive. Jake came home from wherever he'd been spending his days, probably meeting with financial advisors and investment brokers, and found Emma in the kitchen trying to heat up a frozen dinner. The sight of his baby sister struggling with something so basic should have triggered every protective instinct he possessed. Instead, he got annoyed. "Em, you can't keep acting like this," he said, grabbing the microwave dinner from her hands. "Dad's gone, okay? Crying about it isn't going to bring him back, and it's sure as hell not going to help Mom deal with everything she's got on her plate right now." Emma looked at him with those big blue eyes that had been melting my heart since the day she was born. "I miss him, Jake. Don't you miss him at all?" "Of course I miss him," Jake replied, but his tone suggested otherwise. "But I'm not going to fall apart about it. Dad would want us to be strong, to take care of business, to make smart decisions about our future." Our future, not his future, ours. Jake was already thinking like the man of the house, the one who'd control the family fortune once the legal complications were resolved. "I don't care about the money," Emma said quietly. "I just want my dad back." "Well, that's not happening," Jake snapped with a cruelty that made me want to punch through the monitor screen. "So maybe you should start caring about practical things instead of living in fantasy land." Emma stared at her brother like she was seeing him clearly for the first time. Then she did something that proved she was more her father's daughter than either of her siblings. She stood up to him. "You know what's really messed up, Jake? Dad's been dead for 4 days, and you've spent more time with his lawyer than with me or Mom. You've been on your phone constantly, making plans and deals and whatever else you think is more important than grieving. It's like you don't even care that he's gone." "I care," Jake protested, but the words lacked conviction. "I'm just handling things differently than you are." "No," Emma said with startling clarity. "You're handling things like Dad was a business problem that got solved. And that's not how you treat someone you love." From my hidden room, I wanted to applaud. My youngest child, the one I'd worried was too young to understand complex emotions, had just delivered the most accurate assessment of her brother's character that I'd ever heard. Jake left the kitchen without another word, probably heading back to his room to research more investment opportunities. But Emma stayed, staring at the family photo hanging above our breakfast nook, the one from our last vacation to Yellowstone, when we still looked like people who enjoyed each other's company. "I love you, Dad," she whispered to the photo, "and I'm going to keep loving you even if everyone else forgets how." That night, I made a decision that would change everything. Emma deserved to know that someone in our family was capable of the kind of love she was showing. She deserved to know that her father had seen her truth, her goodness, her pure heart. She deserved to know that love like hers was worth coming back from the dead for. Tomorrow, I decided, I would begin my resurrection. But first, I needed to figure out how to do it without destroying the one person in our family whose love was real. Planning your own resurrection turns out to be infinitely more complicated than staging your death. After 5 days of watching my family's true natures reveal themselves, I sat in my underground surveillance room at 3 a.m., surrounded by monitors showing my sleeping household, trying to figure out how to return from the dead without destroying the one person who truly mourned me. Emma had fallen asleep at her desk again, her head pillowed on a half-finished essay about family loyalty for her AP English class. Even in sleep, she clutched my Stanford hoodie, and I could see the tear stains on her cheeks reflecting the glow from her laptop screen. My baby girl had been surviving on love and grief for 5 days, and it was killing me. Meanwhile, Catherine slept peacefully in our bed, her phone charging on what used to be my nightstand, probably full of messages from Michael about their future plans. Jake was in his room, door locked, likely researching ways to break the terms of my will, or find loopholes that would give him immediate access to his inheritance. The 3 people I'd lived my entire adult life for, and only one of them was genuinely suffering from my absence. I'd originally planned to stay dead for a full week, to gather enough evidence to confront my family with their true feelings. But watching Emma waste away from grief while Catherine planned her escape with Michael had accelerated my timeline. I couldn't let my daughter suffer for my need for truth. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. I would stage a miraculous survival, amnesia from the trauma, wandering the mountains for days, finally finding my way to a hospital where I'd be identified and returned to my grateful family. Detective Morrison had been a good friend in high school. One phone call would set the machinery in motion. But first, I needed insurance, evidence of what I'd discovered, recorded confessions, proof that would protect me if my resurrection went wrong. Because now I knew the truth. Catherine and Michael hadn't just been having an affair. They'd been planning a life together funded by my death. At 4:17 a.m., I activated the house's emergency lockdown system, a security feature Michael himself had installed. All doors and windows sealed automatically, motion sensors activated, and the house became an impenetrable fortress. No one could enter or leave without my override code. Then I waited. Catherine woke first, around 6:30, trying to slip out for her morning run, and her usual rendezvous with Michael. When the front door wouldn't budge and the security system announced lockdown activated, confusion turned to panic. "What's happening?" she called out, her voice echoing through the house as she tried every exit. "Kids, wake up! Something's wrong with the security system." Jake emerged from his room, immediately irritated by this disruption to his inheritance planning schedule. Emma stumbled out last, my hoodie still wrapped around her like armor against the world. "The system's malfunctioned," Jake announced after checking his phone. "I can't reach the security company." "Mom, didn't Dad give you the override codes?" "No," Catherine lied smoothly. "He always handled the technical things." Of course she would lie. Admitting she knew the codes would mean explaining how she'd learned them from Michael. That's when I made my entrance. The basement door opened with a soft click that seemed to echo like thunder in the silence of our trapped house. 3 faces turned toward the sound, 3 expressions that ranged from confusion to hope to absolute terror. I emerged from the shadows like Lazarus returning from the tomb. 5 days of beard growth and carefully disheveled clothes completing my performance as a man who'd survived the impossible. "Hello, family," I said quietly. "Miss me?" The silence that followed my resurrection lasted exactly 14 seconds. I know because I counted, watching 3 faces process the impossible sight of a dead man standing in their living room. Emma broke first. A sound escaped her throat. Not quite a scream, not quite a sob, and she launched herself across the room with the desperate energy of someone who'd been drowning and suddenly found air. Her arms wrapped around me with crushing force, and I felt 5 days of grief pour out of her in shuddering waves. "Dad, Dad, oh my God. Dad, you're alive. You're really alive," she kept repeating, her words muffled against my chest as she held on like she was afraid I might disappear again. This was love. Pure, uncomplicated, joyful love at its most powerful. For a moment, feeling my daughter's arms around me, I almost forgot why I'd staged this elaborate test in the first place. Jake's reaction was different. Shock, yes, but underneath it was something that looked disturbingly like disappointment. "How?" he managed to say. "The police said, the car, the blood, how is this possible?" Always the pragmatist, my son. Even witnessing a miracle, he wanted to understand the mechanics. But Catherine looked like she'd seen an actual ghost. Her face had gone white as bone, and she gripped the back of our leather couch like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her mouth opened and closed soundlessly, and I could see her mind racing, calculating, trying to understand what this meant for her carefully laid plans. "Sit down," I said gently, never taking my arms from around Emma, who seemed determined never to let me go again. "All of you, we need to talk." "Dad, what happened?" Emma asked, pulling back just enough to study my face with wide, worried eyes. "Where have you been? Are you hurt? Do you need a doctor?" Such beautiful, innocent concern. It made what I had to do next even more necessary. "I've been watching," I said simply. "For 5 days, I've been watching all of you." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Jake's eyes darted toward the security cameras he'd never paid attention to before. Catherine's grip on the couch tightened until her knuckles went white. "I know about the affair, Catherine," I continued, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. "I know about Michael. I know about your plans for Tuscany and the vineyard and the new life you're going to build with my money." Catherine's legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the couch like a puppet with cut strings. "Marcus, I can explain." "Can you?" I interrupted. "Can you explain why you called your lover 4 hours after my supposed death to tell him you were finally free? Can you explain why you've been using our home as your personal hotel while our children grieved?" Emma had gone very still in my arms. I felt her pull back slightly, confusion replacing relief on her face. "Dad, what are you talking about?" This was the part I dreaded most. Emma didn't deserve to learn about her mother's betrayal, but she deserved to know the truth about the family she'd been mourning. "Jake," I said, turning to my son, "would you like to explain to your sister why you spent our first day of grief calling real estate agents and cryptocurrency investors? Why you've been treating my death like a business opportunity instead of a loss?" Jake's face flushed red. "That's not fair. I was being practical, thinking about our future." "Whose future?" I asked. "Because from what I saw, you were thinking about your future, your investments, your opportunities, your freedom from the family obligations you've always resented." The room fell silent except for Emma's sharp intake of breath. My daughter was a smart girl. She was connecting the dots I'd been forced to spell out. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. She looked first at Catherine, then at Jake, searching their faces for denial that never came. "Were you both just waiting for him to die?" "Emma, sweetheart, it's complicated," Catherine began, but Emma cut her off with a look of pure disgust. "No, it's not complicated," Emma said, and I heard echoes of myself in her voice, the steel that came out when we Holloways were pushed too far. "It's simple. You didn't love Dad. You loved his money." She turned back to me, tears streaming down her face, but her voice was steady. "How long have you known?" "Long enough," I said. "Long enough to realize that I needed to find out who really loved Marcus Holloway and who loved what Marcus Holloway could provide." "The surveillance room," Jake said suddenly, understanding dawning on his face. "You built a surveillance room. You've been spying on us." "I've been learning about you," I corrected, "and what I learned broke my heart, but it also saved my life." Catherine finally found her voice. "This is sick, Marcus. Staging your own death, traumatizing your children, spying on your family. This is the behavior of a disturbed person." "Is it?" I asked. "Or is it the behavior of a man who suspected his wife was cheating on him and his son was counting his inheritance before the body was cold? Because that's exactly what I found." "But Emma," I continued, looking at my daughter with all the love I'd been holding back for 5 days. "Emma showed me something I'd forgotten existed. She showed me what real love looks like." Emma was crying again, but these weren't tears of grief. They were tears of vindication, of being seen and valued and chosen. "I missed you so much, Dad. I thought I'd never see you again." "I know, baby girl, and I'm sorry I put you through that. But I needed to know that someone in this family loved me enough to mourn me. You proved that love is real." What happened next would haunt our family forever. The truth, once released, spread through our house like poison gas, contaminating every memory, every shared moment, every photograph on our walls. There's no going back from certain revelations, no way to unknow what you've learned about the people you've loved. Catherine tried damage control first. "Marcus, what we had, what Michael and I have. It doesn't mean I never loved you. People change, relationships evolve. We grew apart years ago, but I stayed because of the children, because of our life together." "You stayed for the money," I said quietly. "Let's not dress it up in noble intentions." "That's not true." "I have recordings, Catherine, every phone call, every conversation with Michael, including the one where you called our marriage 18 years of pretending. So please, don't insult my intelligence by claiming this was about love." Emma was staring at her mother with an expression I'd never seen before. Complete disillusionment. The woman who'd raised her, who'd taught her about loyalty and family values, was revealed as someone who'd been living a lie for years. "How long?" Emma asked. "How long have you been cheating on Dad?" Catherine's composure finally cracked. "Emma, you don't understand. Your father worked constantly. He was never here, emotionally or physically. I was lonely. I needed—" "How long?" Emma repeated with steel in her voice. 2 years, Catherine whispered. 2 years. Not a mistake, not a moment of weakness, but a sustained betrayal that had happened under our roof while I worked to provide for our family. While I worried about whether they loved me, Catherine had been actively planning her escape. Jake, meanwhile, was dealing with his own revelation. "So what now?" he asked with typical pragmatism. "You're alive, the will is invalid, and we all know the truth about each other. What's the end game here, Dad?" "The end game. Leave it to Jake to think about this like a business transaction." "The end game," I said slowly, "is that I learned exactly what I needed to know. Emma is the only one in this family who loves me unconditionally. The rest of you—" I paused, choosing my words carefully. "The rest of you have been living in a house funded by someone you couldn't wait to be free of." "So what are you going to do?" Catherine asked. "Divorce me? Cut Jake out of your will? Punish us for not being the family you wanted us to be?" It was a fair question, and one I'd been grappling with during my 5 days in the surveillance room. What do you do when you discover that the life you've built is largely an illusion? "I'm going to give you what you wanted," I said finally. "Catherine, you want to be free? You're free. I'll file for divorce tomorrow. You can have the house, a fair settlement, and your chance at happiness with Michael. But you won't get to rewrite history. You won't get to pretend this was a mutual decision or that we grew apart naturally. You chose another man over your husband, and everyone will know it." Catherine's face went through a series of emotions: relief, fear, anger, and finally resignation. "And Jake?" I looked at my son, this young man who'd inherited my eyes but none of my heart. "Jake gets what he's always wanted: independence. He's an adult, he can make his own way in the world, but he won't be doing it with my money, not after what I saw." "Dad, come on," Jake protested. "I was just being practical." "You were being greedy," I interrupted. "The ink wasn't dry on my death certificate before you were calculating your inheritance and planning to sell the family home. That's not grief, son. That's opportunism." "But Emma," I continued, turning to my daughter, who was watching this family disintegration with wide, scared eyes, "Emma gets a choice. She can stay with me and we'll build something real together. Or she can stay with her mother and try to salvage whatever's left of that relationship. But she gets to choose based on love, not money or convenience." Emma didn't hesitate. "I choose you, Dad. I choose the parent who actually loves me back." Those words, "the parent who actually loves me back," hit Catherine like a physical blow. She pressed her hand to her mouth, and for the first time since this all began, I saw genuine remorse in her eyes. "Emma, sweetheart, I do love you. I love you so much. You love the idea of me," Emma said with devastating clarity. "You love having a daughter who makes you look like a good mother. But if you really loved me, you wouldn't have been planning to run away to Italy with Michael the minute Dad was out of the picture." Italy. Emma had been listening more carefully than any of us realized. That's when my phone rang. Michael Reeves, right on schedule. He'd probably been waiting outside for the lockdown to end so he could comfort the grieving widow and discuss their future plans. I answered the call on speaker. "Catherine? Baby, what's wrong? The house is on lockdown and you're not answering my texts. Are you okay?" The silence that followed was deafening. Michael's voice, intimate and concerned, filled our living room like smoke, making his affair with my wife undeniably real to Emma and Jake. "Hello, Michael," I said into the phone. "This is Marcus." The line went dead immediately. 6 months later, I sit in the same chair where this story began, but everything else has changed. The house feels different now, lighter somehow, despite all the darkness we've uncovered. It's amazing how much space opens up when you stop living with people who resent your existence. Catherine moved out 2 weeks after my resurrection, taking only her personal belongings and the settlement my lawyer grudgingly negotiated. She and Michael are living in a condo downtown now, planning their Tuscany adventure with what remains of her divorce settlement. I see her occasionally at Emma's school events, and we maintain the polite distance of two people who once shared a life but never really knew each other. Jake chose pride over family. When I offered him a chance to start over, to build a real relationship based on honesty rather than inheritance expectations, he turned it down. "I don't need your money or your approval," he said, as if those were the only things I'd been offering. He moved to California, funded by some cryptocurrency scheme that probably won't last the year. We exchange Christmas cards now, formal little notes that say everything and nothing about the relationship we used to have. But Emma has flourished in ways I never expected. Without the toxic dynamic of a dysfunctional family pretending to be happy, she's become more herself than ever. She's confident, funny, honest in ways that remind me why I used to love coming home. We have dinner together every night now. Real conversations, not performances. She's applied to Stanford for early admission, wants to study psychology and help families communicate better. "Maybe what happened to us could help other people," she said last week over pizza and homework. "Maybe our story isn't just about what we lost, but about what we found." What we found. The idea that something good could come from such devastating revelations seems impossible. But Emma's right. We found truth. We found each other. We found out what love actually looks like when it's not contaminated by expectation or obligation or greed. The surveillance room is gone now. I had it dismantled the day after my resurrection, all the cameras removed, all the recordings deleted except for one. I kept the video of Emma talking to my photograph, telling me she loved me and would keep loving me even if everyone else forgot. That recording reminds me every day why the truth, however painful, was worth discovering. People ask me if I regret staging my own death, if I think the price was too high for the knowledge I gained. The honest answer is complicated. I lost a 20-year marriage, a relationship with my son, and the comfortable illusion that my family was happy. But I gained something more valuable: certainty. I know, without question, that Emma's love is real, that my brother David's grief was genuine, that some relationships can survive even the most brutal honesty. I also learned that I was partially responsible for the dysfunction I'd discovered. My obsession with providing financially had created distance between me and my family. My workaholic tendencies had given Catherine room to find emotional connection elsewhere. My assumption that money equaled love had taught Jake to see our relationship as transactional. But recognizing my mistakes doesn't excuse theirs. Understanding why Catherine had an affair doesn't make the betrayal less painful. Seeing how my absence created opportunities for Jake's greed doesn't make his behavior acceptable. The most important thing I learned is this: love that has to be tested probably isn't love at all. Real love, the kind Emma showed me, doesn't need proof. It exists independently of circumstances, of money, of convenience. It survives death, real or staged, and comes back stronger. 3 weeks ago, Emma asked me a question that's been haunting me ever since. Dad, do you think Mom ever really loved you, even in the beginning? I've thought about this constantly. Looking back at our early years, I can find moments that felt genuine. Our first apartment, Emma's birth, quiet Sunday mornings when we seemed to genuinely enjoy each other's company. But were those moments real? Or was I seeing what I wanted to see? The truth is, I'll never know, and that's something I've had to accept. Some questions don't have satisfying answers. Some relationships exist in shades of gray that can't be reduced to simple truths about love or the absence of it. What I do know is this: the person sitting across from me at dinner every night, helping with homework, sharing stories about her day, planning for college and careers and a future that includes me, that person loves me completely. Not my bank account, not my connections, not what I can do for her. She loves Marcus Holloway the man, flaws and all. And that's enough. That's more than enough. Sometimes I catch Emma watching me with concern, like she's afraid I might disappear again. I'm not going anywhere, I always tell her, and I mean it. I've already died once in this life. I came back for her, and I'm staying for her. The cameras are gone, but the truth remains. My family wasn't what I thought it was, but what's left is real. Emma and I are building something new from the ashes of everything I thought I wanted. A relationship based on honesty, on choice, on love that doesn't need to be proven because it proves itself every single day. If you've made it this far in my story, if you've felt the uncomfortable recognition of your own relationships in my family's dysfunction, then maybe you understand why I had to share this. Not for sympathy or attention, but as a warning and a hope. The warning: the people closest to you might be performing love rather than feeling it. The money, the security, the lifestyle you provide might be more important to them than you are. That's a hard truth, but it's one worth knowing. The hope: real love exists. It's rare, it's precious, and it's worth everything you have to sacrifice to find it. When you discover someone who loves you for who you are rather than what you provide, hold on to them with everything you have. Emma just called down that dinner's ready. She's making her grandmother's meatloaf recipe, the one Catherine never bothered to learn. We'll sit at our table, just the two of us, and talk about her college applications and my work and whether we should get a dog now that the house feels too quiet sometimes. It won't be the family I planned for, but it's the family I chose. And for the first time in years, that feels like enough. The man who staged his own death to find love discovered that love was there all along. He just had to lose everything else to see it clearly. Some resurrections are worth the dying that comes before them.